Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this lesson where we're going to talk about computers. Computers are something that I love. I was kind of surprised that I haven't done an English lesson yet where I talk specifically about computers. I did a lesson about technology. I did a lesson about schools. I did a lesson about the office, but I haven't specifically done a lesson about computers. So in this English lesson, we'll talk about computers. I'll cover about 4 or 5 of the same vocabulary words as I did in my technology lesson, but a lot of the words will be more specific to the actual world of computers and to computers themselves. As I said, I'm surprised I haven't done a lesson on computers yet because I love computers. I just love them. I'll talk about that more later, but anyways. So the computer is something that arrived in my life when I was about 10 or 11. And in English, you would say that I took to it. When you take to something, it means that you really like it. I certainly took to using the computer when I was a kid, and I still really like computers today. They are fascinating. You have 2 types of computers. There is something called a desktop computer and a laptop or notebook. Or if you own a laptop or notebook from the company called Apple, you might simply just call it a MacBook. But the general terms are laptop or notebook. I think we use laptop most commonly, but certainly you can see the difference. A desktop is a big computer that sits on a desk, and it's not portable. It's not mobile. You can't take your desktop other places very easily. But a laptop is very easy to take to work, to take home from work, to take to school. Laptops certainly are very, very handy. I'm happy because laptops now have batteries that last all day. The first laptop I bought many, many years ago, the battery did not last all day. So I always had to look for a place to plug it in. So that's another difference. A desktop computer needs to be plugged in to the wall all the time. And a laptop or notebook computer runs off of an internal battery. So very handy. Lets you go to the cafe with your laptop or notebook and work on some things. It lets you, certainly it has been nice for work to be able to go from classroom to classroom and take my laptop with me. Very, very handy. So 2 types of computers, laptop and notebook. I do want to mention here that I'm not going to talk about tablets or iPads or smartphones in this lesson. This lesson will just be about computers. I know many of you use phones more than you use a computer, but this lesson will specifically be about computers. When you look at a computer, you're looking at the screen or you're looking at the monitor, okay? This is for, I guess a screen would be the same whether it's a laptop or desktop, but with a desktop computer, you will have a monitor. I think we mostly call it the screen. So we have concerns though during this time that people are getting too much screen time. Screen time is the amount of time every day you spend looking at a computer or a smartphone or an iPad or tablet. And there's a bit of a worry that because so many people are working from home and because so many students are learning remotely or using computers, that we're spending too much time on the computer. And we refer to that as screen time. So you might read articles that say, kids are getting too much screen time during the pandemic. They're spending too much time on their computer. You might have a laptop that has a touch screen. Obviously, a touch screen is a screen you can touch with your finger. I do not own any computers with touch screens. I think I had one, but I never used it. I never actually touched the screen. But a touch screen allows you to control what your computer is doing by touching the screen. You can use your finger to actually use the computer. It's interesting how with our phones, we're used to using our fingers, but with our computers, we're more likely to use a couple other input devices. One of those is a mouse. So the mouse is an interesting thing. It allows you to use your hand to control what's called the mouse pointer on the computer. And I'm old enough to remember a time when computers didn't have mice. There were no mice, and people just used the keyboard. And then old people had trouble learning to use a mouse. I remember that. I taught a night class once, and older people had trouble learning how to use a mouse. They couldn't coordinate their movement with what was happening on the screen. A laptop has what's called a touchpad. A touchpad is a small square in front of the keyboard that lets you move the mouse pointer around on your computer using your finger. So most computers, most laptops will have a touchpad, and you can use that in the same way that you would use a mouse. And then, of course, computers have a keyboard. This is something that smartphones and tablets don't really have. They don't have a physical keyboard. They do have a keyboard on the screen that you can use, but computers have a physical keyboard. Okay, there is it's called a peripheral, but we don't use that word very often anymore. But it's a device that you connect to a computer so that you can type. Students in Canada still learn to type in elementary school. We sometimes call it keyboarding. I was going to ask Brent if students in his school still learn keyboarding or typing. So in the Canadian school system, students still learn to type up until grade 8, which would be at around age 12 or 13. They still learn to type, or we also call it keyboarding. I actually, when I started teaching, the first computer class I taught, I also taught students how to type. That was a long time ago. They did time tests and all that fun stuff. Most students in Canada, when they are 12 years old or 13 years old, they're supposed to type 30 words per minute. So we time people. Most don't, but some do, okay? Some do type 30 words per minute. So those are the ways you interact with a computer. You use the mouse, the touchpad, or the keyboard. You might also have a webcam on your computer. If you own a modern laptop, it will have a webcam built in. There will be a tiny hole above the screen, and that's the webcam. And that's what you use when you use Zoom or Skype or FaceTime in order to talk to other people. If you have a desktop computer, though, you might buy this little thing, which is an external webcam, and you might use that to be able to have the same kind of interaction with people. Or maybe you use the webcam to record yourself or to do live streams like what I'm doing right now. Webcams are a camera that is attached to a computer or built in to a computer. So again, a laptop has a webcam built in. The English term built in means it's part of the actual machine. It's built in. Or you might buy an external webcam and it will be connected to the computer. If you like playing games, the type of graphics card in your computer will be very important to you. If you are someone like me who does a lot of video editing, the type of graphic card in your computer is very important to you. Most people, though, aren't aware of what type of graphics card they have. But gamers, people who play a lot of games on their computers, or people who do video editing like myself, always want to have a really good graphics card. This is the card that connects, it's where you connect the screen or monitor to the computer, and it's the part of the computer that makes the images that show up on your screen. So a very fast graphics card, or video card, that's the other word for it. I forgot to mention that. A fast graphics card or video card is always good if you like playing games. Your computer has two types of memory. It has system memory. This is memory that your computer uses when it is on. It also has a hard drive, which is a type of storage, and you could call it memory, that the computer uses when it is off, or sometimes while you're using the computer when it's on. So this is always hard for people to understand, but your system memory is the amount of RAM, that's the other word we use for it, that your computer uses when it is on. My computers have lots of memory. They have lots of RAM because editing video, especially the video where I did some special effects recently, requires your system to have a lot of memory. It requires that your computer has a lot of memory. And then your hard drive is where you store all of your information when your computer is off and when it is on. So it's good to have large hard drives as well. depending on what you use your computer for. But certainly if you start making videos, you need lots of storage space. So you want to have a large hard drive. So the brain of a computer. So your brain's in your head, right? The brain of a computer is the CPU, or the central processing unit. Computers have been getting faster every year since the year they were invented. And the CPUs have been getting smaller every year since computers have been invented. It's a rather cool thing, but that is what lets the computer do its processing, okay? You can also say processing, okay? I say it two different ways: central processing unit, central processing unit. I think processing sounds better, but I think I'm getting stuck between British and English, or an American pronunciation. But the CPU, or the central processing unit, is the computer's brain. And we use the word CPU, even though it's an acronym or a short form. We definitely refer to it as the CPU. So earlier there was a question about what CPU does your computer have? So a little bit about ports. When you connect things to your computer, often you will use a USB port. I think USB stands for Universal Serial Bus. A USB port is probably the most common type of port on a computer, although now they have also gotten smaller, and there are some computers that don't have USB ports. They just have a Thunderbolt, or I forget the exact name of the port, Lightning port. So the USB port is where you would plug in your mouse, you would plug in my microphone is plugged into a USB port. My camera is plugged into a USB port. So you can hear me say plug in. You plug things in to a USB port. On my bigger computer, the keyboard is plugged into a USB port as well. Some computers also have what's called a card reader. I thought I had a card here. I guess I lost it. But we have small cards. Some are called SD cards. There's various names, but these are the most common type of card that I use. It's called an SD card, and I put it into a card reader or an SD card reader in order to get my files off of it. When I go outside to make a video, I put an SD card in my camera. I make my video. I come into the house and I put my SD card into the card reader of my computer, and I transfer the video files from the SD card onto my hard drive. And then I can start editing them. So most computers have an SD card reader or a card reader, and that's where you can read the cards that you have. Not everyone has a printer anymore, but a long time ago, everyone had a printer. This is what you use when you want a printout, when you want to print something. I still have a printer, as most of you know, because I use it to print out the words and phrases I teach on my other YouTube channel. But I also have a printer just because Jen and I have a farm, and we need to print out invoices sometimes. When we sell flowers, the person wants a paper copy of the transaction, which we call an invoice. So we still have a printer. There are laser printers and inkjet printers. I have a laser printer, but there are inkjet printers as well that print in color. Let's see here. Speakers. Some people have speakers connected to their computer. You can see really little speakers here, and we call them computer speakers because they're smaller and they're made to be connected to a computer. So I used to have speakers connected to my computer, but now I just use headphones. I actually use earbuds, not like these. These are AirPods. I don't have wireless earbuds, but I do have earbuds that I use. You see them every week. Mine are the less expensive kind that still have a cable attached to it. And so with your earbuds, you plug them in, and then you can hear what you want to hear. So if you want to listen to music, or if you want to watch a movie, you would hear the sound from the computer through the speakers, through your headphones, or through your earbuds. Now, again, I use the word AirPods. AirPods are a specific type of earbud that's made by the Apple computer company. So there are some names that are used by one company, and we start to use them universally, because I know some students have earbuds from a different company, but people still sometimes call them AirPods. I think people get confused a little bit. And if you work at a place of business, or if you are learning English online with a tutor on Skype or Zoom or FaceTime, you might have what's called a headset. A headset is a set of headphones, but it also has a microphone, okay? It's very nice to use a headset when you're having a conversation online because it makes the audio much clearer, okay? I don't use a headset because I have a nice microphone right here, but I do actually have a headset at school that I use when I'm doing Zoom calls at school. It's just a nice headset. It has a microphone that comes in front of my mouth, and it just makes the audio much clearer when I'm talking to people at school. You would plug your headphones and your earbuds into the headphone jack. That is the green one. I actually couldn't find out why we call it a jack, but the green little hole in the computer is the headphone jack. The pink one way over there is the microphone jack. Now, interestingly enough, I found that sometimes people call the headphone jack I found out that the headphone jack is almost always called the headphone jack, but the microphone jack is sometimes called the microphone port. So I'm not sure why we switched the names sometimes, but if you have a pair of earbuds or if you have a pair of headphones, you would plug them into the headphone jack on your computer. We also sometimes store things outside of our computer on something called a USB stick, a flash drive, a thumb drive, a pen drive. They have a whole bunch of different names. A USB drive. I think the most common word for me is USB stick or flash drive. But there's a number of different names. So let's go over them again. USB stick, USB drive. Although a USB drive can be bigger as well. A flash drive, a thumb drive, a pen drive. They're basically that little thing that you get that you can plug into a USB port. You can put things onto it from your computer, either files or folders, and then you can take it out and move it to a different computer or give it to someone if they need it. On your computer, you have what are called icons. You can see that there are icons here for different things that you can use the computer for. You would use the mouse pointer to select an icon and then double click it if you want to use it. So with a mouse, you can click, but when you want to run a program, you double click, okay? That's how we refer to it. You would say, well, double click the Spotify icon if you want to listen to music, or double click the, Firefox icon if you want to use the internet. So an icon is a small symbol that you can click when you want to use something. Your computer will have software on it. So notice the difference here. On a phone, you have apps. On a computer, you have software, or we sometimes call them programs, okay? So on my computer, I have programs like Premiere Pro to edit videos. I have Microsoft Office. I have Chrome, so I can use the internet. I have many different pieces of software on my computer. And we sometimes also call them programs. So you'll see here the icon for Chrome, which I could double click if I want to run that program. Notice all the language I learned used in that sentence. This is the icon for Chrome. So if I was talking to my mom, I could say, oh, double click the Chrome icon and run Chrome, and then go to google.com to do your search. So you hear the language I'm using to talk about the computer. On a computer, you have files and you have folders. So a file is something specific to a piece of software. When I save something in Microsoft Word, it's a Word file. When I save something from Premiere Pro, it's a project file. So a file is what you're currently working on. A folder, or what some people call a directory, is the place where you put the file. So a well-organized person has lots of folders with really specific names, and they keep their computer very organized. They put all their files for work in one folder. They put all their files for their games in another folder. They put all their files for things that they work on at home in another folder. I am very organized with my folders. I organize by time, date, topic, etc., etc. I have to be because I create a lot of videos for YouTube. And so I want to know how to easily find them back. When you look at a computer, you see the desktop. So I'm sitting at a desk. So physically, there is a desktop in front of me because it's a desk. But on my computer, I would also call that the desktop. Okay. So you have icons on the desktop. And basically you can arrange them however you want. And that is what you see when you look at a computer before you run a program. At the bottom, you will have what's called the taskbar or the dock. There's a couple other names for it, but those are probably the two most familiar. And that's where you can put little icons that you use a lot. It's also where you might have, as you see here, your recycle bin or your trash can, where you can put files and folders that you don't need anymore when you want to delete them. So when you delete something on a computer, you put it in the trash can and then you empty the trash can or the recycle bin. But yes, the bar at the bottom of your screen is either called a taskbar or a dock. And you can customize that to look however you want when you use your computer. I've mentioned this a few times. When you move your mouse around, you have a mouse pointer. Anyways, when you move the mouse physically on the screen, the mouse pointer will move, and it's either a pointer or sometimes it's a hand. And when you are using a word processor or when you are typing an email, there will be this line that blinks. I'm trying to make a blinking motion, and that's called your cursor. Your cursor lets you know where letters will appear when you start typing, and you can put your cursor where you want it. And then when you start typing, that's where the words will appear. If you're using a computer, you will most likely have a power bar because you'll want to plug in your computer and maybe a printer and maybe the monitor or screen, depending on what you're using. But if you have a power bar, you can plug it in to the electrical outlet, and then you can plug many things in. In Canada, our power bars look like this. Different places in the world have different electrical outlets, and so the power bar will look a little bit different for you, but the same concept. If you have a computer, you have cables. We use cables as a general term for any wire that you use to connect something to the computer. So I have a cable to connect my phone when I want to charge my phone or when I want to transfer files. I have a cable going from the microphone to my computer. So a cable is basically any type of wire or cable that you use to connect something to your computer. You will most likely, even if you don't know it, have one of these somewhere in your house, which is called a router. A router is something that connects you to the internet. So I have a router in my house. I also have a router on the side of my barn outside for when I do live streams outside. A router is something that connects you to the internet and then gives you Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is the ability to use a laptop or notebook computer wherever you want. Okay. So if you have Wi-Fi in a restaurant, you can use your phone and your laptop there and connect to their Wi-Fi in order to use the internet. And usually you need the Wi-Fi password. So if you're ever traveling, you might have to ask that question like, can you tell me what the Wi-Fi password is? And then you can connect and use the Wi-Fi. If you have problems with a computer, you will most likely call tech support of some kind. We don't use the whole word technology. We don't say technology support. We say tech support. My cousin has a business and he provides tech support for schools and other businesses. Sometimes when I have a question, I go and ask him for advice because he gives really good tech support. A tech support person is someone who knows how to fix computers. This picture is really, really old. Actually, it made me laugh when I saw this picture because I was trying to figure out how old this computer was. I think the computer isn't actually too old. The guy's certainly fairly old. Anyways, tech support, like at school, if a computer doesn't work, they'll say, oh, you send an email to tech support or go to the tech support room and ask for some help. And then just a couple last slides here. Someone who makes software, someone who creates computer programs is called a programmer. So when I used to do that, I was a computer programmer. Many of you I know do some computer programming. So you are also computer programmers. So if you make software or if you make apps for phones, you are a computer programmer. And if you make web pages, we would call you a web designer. So a web designer is someone who creates all the beautiful web pages that we see on the internet.